Throughout the 90s and 2000s, there was a popular trend of video games being made to coincide with the release of a popular movie. These games were seen as big bucks to developers, as they could ride the hype of an already popular franchise in order to boost sales and ensure their games flew off the shelf. However, because the time it takes to make a movie is so much shorter than the time it takes to make a video game, these games were often rushed by small groups of developers who were given little to no resources to make these games. These games eventually grew a reputation of being awful, even when compared to their often also awful films. So, I'm doing a series looking at these odd combinations. We'll look at the movie and the game to see how they fit together, or, more likely, how they don't. This is Movie Games. You know, when I tell people about this series, one of two things will happen. They'll either tell me about movie games that they grew up playing that they want to see me review on the channel, which you should totally do down in the comments of this video, or they'll ask me what I'm currently working on. And about 90% of the time when I tell them, they say, "There's a video game for that movie?" As is the case with today's film, B-Movie. Released in November of 2007, this film comes straight from the mind of Jerry Seinfeld himself, who wrote, produced, and starred in the film, along with several other alumni of the Seinfeld sitcom. The film was a box office success, bringing in almost double its $150 million budget, which was very surprising to find out that it took us as a species $150 million to create.
You like jazz?
Despite receiving mixed reviews upon its release, the film has grown a cult following on the internet in the last few years, in part due to memes and viral videos such as the entire B-movie, but every time it says B, it speeds up by 15%. The B-movie at 3000% speed, except when they say B. The entire B-movie, but every time they say B, it restarts. The B-movie being weird AF for nearly 8 minutes straight. The B-movie trailer, but every time it says B, a dead meme appears. And film theories, you'll die before this B-movie meme. So let's see what all the buzz is about. This is B-Movie. The movie begins with our protagonist, Barry Benson, voiced by Jerry Seinfeld, getting ready for his college graduation. FYI, if you hated that pun I made at the end of my intro, you're gonna despise the opening of this movie, which is literally nothing but bad B puns.
Black, yellow, black. Ooh, black and yellow. Yeah, let's shake it up. Looking sharp.
And a perfect report card. All B's.
You know, these puns are like drinking. There's a fine line between I'm having a good time here and I wish I would just pass out already. We see Barry go to pick up his friend in a car? Wait, if you can fly, why would bees have cars? And what would bee cars even run on? It can't be oil and gas. Are they electric cars and Elon Musk secretly controls all the bees in the world? Do they run on honey and that's why bees are always producing it? These aren't the questions I thought B-Movie would be asking 2 minutes in. So Barry and his friend Adam, voiced by Matthew Broderick,
Oh, not good.
arrive at their graduation ceremony.
Boy, quite a bit of pomp. Under the circumstances.
What circumstances? You haven't mentioned any circumstances yet.
Today we are men.
We are.
Be men.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
What am I watching right now? Immediately after the ceremony, the bees are taken into the center of the hive where all the honey is made.
That girl was hot.
She's my cousin.
She is?
Yes, we're all cousins.
Right, you're right.
Incest is funny, isn't that right, Lion King? Barry is surprised, though, to learn that after graduating college, he now has to pick a job in the hive to do for the rest of his life.
The same job for the rest of your life? I didn't know that.
How did he not know this already? Did nobody tell him this in those
3 days of grade school, 3 days of high school, 3 days of college. So you'll just work us to death?
We'll sure try.
Isn't that Amazon's new motto?
Wow. That blew my mind.
What's the difference? Adam, how could you say that?
He didn't say that. He said,
Wow. That blew my mind.
in fact, most of Barry's problems in this movie can eventually be traced back to not listening to people. So, as Barry and Adam talk about their future jobs, they come across the pollen jocks, a group of bees who leave the hive to collect nectar and pollinate flowers.
Those ladies? Oh, aren't they our cousins too?
Distant.
So, this film takes place in Alabama, right? Immediately after saying not just anyone can be a pollen jock, we get a scene showing just anyone can be a pollen jock, as Barry is invited to fly with them.
Bee law number 1, absolutely no talking to humans.
Why is that the number one rule? I feel like there are more important rules for bees than talking to humans. Stuff like stay out of the water, watch out for cars, don't bring murder hornets into the hive. All of these seem more important than not talking to people.
Ring, check, stinger, check.
Scared out of my shorts. Check.
Don't worry, Barry. Nobody else here seems to be wearing shorts. Or pants, for that matter, so why would you even have this expression? So Barry leaves the hive in what is a very nice scene, showing Barry and the other bees flying around New York City. It's also pretty cool seeing these pollination and nectar-sucking guns that they have. The group eventually makes their way to a tennis court.
What is it?
I don't know, but I'm loving this color.
Okay, How do these bees clearly know so much about the world outside the hive, but still don't know what a tennis ball is?
Guys! This could be bad.
Affirmative.
Very close.
Is it bad that through this whole scene, I'm just rooting for Barry to get squished? I don't think so. Barry gets off the tennis ball, but gets caught in the rain and has to hide inside a random apartment. He tries to get out, but is seen by Ken, played by Patrick Warburton, who tries to kill him before his girlfriend Vanessa, played by Renee Zellweger, stops him.
And this thing could kill me!
Well, why does his life have any less value than yours?
Well, for starters, nobody made an annoying animated film about Ken. Actually, never mind. You know what? Kill both of them. And with that disturbing stare, we begin movie 2. Oh, you didn't know? B-movie isn't really one movie. It's more of a collection of smaller movies that don't really end as much as they just stop. For example, up until now, the film has been about how Barry isn't ready to get a job. That plotline is brought up maybe 2 other times very briefly throughout the rest of the film. Now, it's about Barry falling in love with Vanessa. Gosh, I hope you feel as grossed out as I do. So after she saves his life, Barry goes back to thank Vanessa.
You like jazz?
Smooth. So Barry talks to Vanessa for the first time, as she reacts about how you would expect her to.
I mean, I had to thank you. It's the way I was raised. Oh, that was a little weird.
Honestly, that's the least weird thing that's happened in this entire movie so far.
Hey, you want a little rum cake?
I think this chick has had a little too much rum cake, if you know what I mean.
Are you all right?
No.
Well, on the bright side, I finally found a movie that the game can't possibly be worse than.
You'll be sorry!
So Barry and Vanessa start getting to know each other.
You all right, ma'am?
Oh, yeah, fine. Just having 2 cups of coffee.
You know your life sucks when even Mets fans think you're weird. Barry goes back home and tells Adam about what happened to him.
Humans? Humans? I can't believe you were with humans.
I can't believe you're talking about breaking your #1 law out in the open.
We are not them. We're us. There's us. And there's them.
Did anyone actually write this script, or did they just smoke crack, eat a pizza, and type up whatever words he or she saw in their hallucinations? Barry's parents try to remind him of the original plot of the movie while he ignores them to fantasize about Vanessa.
You coming?
Well, it's been about 20 seconds, so yeah, I think You were talking about something else, weren't you?
Don't be too long.
Again, that could be interpreted several ways that I'm not okay with in a kid's film. After nearly drowning in honey, Barry blows off his parents to hang out with Vanessa again.
I just hope she's B-ish.
That's Beist. See, Seinfeld, I can make crappy puns too. Where's my $300 million box office?
TiVo. You can just freeze live TV? That's insane.
Hey Jerry, why don't we throw in a TiVo joke? I don't know. Won't that make the film seem dated? Dated? TiVo's not going anywhere. It's gonna be around forever. And now movie 3 begins as Barry realizes the bees' honey is being stolen from them and vows to get to the bottom of it.
And it's hard to make it. There's heating and cooling and stirring. You need a whole Krellman thing.
You know, this part of the movie really makes me realize how much of a bum Barry is. He goes on this long talk about how hard making honey is, but he hasn't actually done it once in his life. He keeps blowing off going to work instead to break laws and hang out with crazy women. And this is the guy we're supposed to be rooting for in this movie. Like he said, Barry goes to investigate the source of the honey and...
He is here. I sense it.
What?
Well, I guess I'll go home now and just leave this nice honey out.
Don't do this to me, movie.
You're too late. It's ours now.
Alright, screw it. Where'd I put my meth? Can't be any worse for me than this film. Barry defeats the stock boy and follows a honey truck to a bee farm.
They make the honey, and we make the money.
You know, of all the people you could make the villains in your animated kids film, beekeepers would not have been at the top of my list. I mean, seriously, what about this is intimidating to you, DreamWorks?
This is your queen? That's a man in woman's clothes. That's a drag queen.
Well, the TiVo line's no longer the most dated thing in the film, so Barry collects evidence and decides to sue the human race for stealing the bees' honey.
Larry, bees have never been afraid to change the world. I mean, what about Bee Columbus? Bee Gandhi? Bejesus?
He died for our stings.
You know they have a Larry King in the human world, too.
Well, that's just depressing now. Barry goes to Vanessa to get help suing the humans.
I'm helping him sue the human race.
What?
Now, Ken is what we call a relatable character.
Why does he talk again?
Hey, the studio note somehow made it into the script. So they send in their lawsuit and show up in court. Hey look, it's the best part of the movie.
Well, if it isn't the B team. Any of you boys work on this?
John Goodman plays Mr. Montgomery, the lawyer for the honey industry. And he makes every line of what this character says amazing, and is one of the few sources of genuine humor throughout this whole movie. And as a southerner myself, I can really relate with that accent.
Nature Gawada put before us. Negotiate with the silkworm for the elastic in my breeches.
Did he just flash the jury?
Graphic motion picture capture Hollywood wizardry.
I really feel like this character needs his own talk show on Fox News. It is strange how lifeless and effortless Seinfeld and Broderick sound in their lines, while all the side characters appear to be giving 110% on every line. To be quite honest, it reminds me a lot of Seinfeld. In that show, Jerry was the normal person, and the comedy came from seeing him interact with these weird, over-the-top characters in his day-to-day life. The same is true here, as when Seinfeld or Broderick try to be silly on their own or with each other, it kind of falls flat. But when we see them reacting to these zany side characters, it's able to get a genuine laugh from time to time. Wait, that's it! I broke the B-movie code. B-movie is Seinfeld, and Seinfeld is B-movie. B-movie, Seinfeld, Seinfeld, B-movie, B-movie, Seinfeld, Seinfeld, B-movie.
Einhorn is Finkel. Finkel is Einhorn!
So the trial begins and the movie reverts to what it thinks passes for dialogue, aka bad puns.
And I see you also own Honeyburton and Hunron.
So this movie definitely wasn't made for kids, right? I mean, what kid is getting these Halliburton and Enron jokes in 2007?
Thank you.
I would give $1 million if this turned into a Goodfellas reunion and Joe Pesci walked in and killed Barry. So the first day of the trial goes well, but Ken is upset to see Barry and Vanessa having dinner together.
That's where I usually sit. Right there.
Is anyone else getting Jack Nicholson and The Shining vibes here?
I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Well. A royal flush.
You're bluffing.
Welcome to your nightmares for the next 2 weeks, folks. Vanessa breaks up with Ken as we go to the second day of the trial, where the lawyer tries to provoke the bees to sting him. Just... what do I even say sometimes? So things look bad for the bees, but Barry has one last idea.
You want a smoking gun? Here is your smoking gun.
Did you get it?
The court finds in favor of the bees.
But this was a jury trial. We just saw them. Why does the judge all of a sudden get to decide on this thing? Well, at least they finally wrapped up one of their little films they had, and it's not like they're going to start another with, wait, there's still 30 minutes left? Why? We did everything. Barry won the trial for the bees. Vanessa broke up with Ken to be with Barry. Everything's been resolved. Why start another plot line now? Oh, because we have to see Barry return all the honey to the bees.
Signal. Take him out.
We'll have a little nausea for Disney, just sue somebody. And we need to see the effect in the world of not having bees. Because that's what this movie was about. Save the bees. Just like how the Lorax was about save the trees.
And whose fault do you think that is?
Alright, hold on there, lady. You sold out your entire species in order to help this bee you have the hots for. If anything, both of you are despicable.
How about a suicide pact?
How do we do it?
I'll sting you, you step on me.
That just kills you twice.
Suicide jokes in a kid's film. Love to see it. So the two decide to go to the Parade of Roses in Pasadena to try and get flowers for the bees to repollinate the world with.
I'm gonna go talk to the marshal.
You do that! This whole parade is a fiasco!
Yeah, that girl's dead, by the way. They get the flowers on the plane, but end up delayed. Barry goes to talk to the pilots because talking to humans has always worked out for him in this film, and they get so scared of him they knock themselves out.
What happened here?
I tried to talk to them, but then there was a dustbuster, a toupee, a life raft exploded. Now one's bald, one's in a boat, and they're both unconscious.
Do you remember when this movie was about a college graduate who didn't know what job he wanted?
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
No, they are dead. They took a direct hit from lightning. That plane is nothing but a giant fireball at this point. The bees hear about the trouble and go to help.
Oh, that flower! Ready, boys? All reverse! Spin it around! Not that flower, the other flower!
Which flower?
That flower!
I'm aiming at the flower.
That's a fat guy in a flowered shirt!
Oh, just shut up and end the movie already. So they land the plane, the bees help repollinate the world, and Barry continues to not have a job. The end. Well, that was B-Movie, and as much as I trashed it, I honestly recommend watching it. Not because I think the movie is good, but because of how odd the film is. It has such little structure that the story just hops all over the place whenever it wants to. And the jokes range from mildly funny accents and puns to crippling amounts of cringiness. If you haven't seen it, I'd say check it out just to see how strange some kids' films can really be. The movie's tie-in game, B-movie game, was released 1 week before the film on Xbox 360, PS2, Nintendo Wii, and Nintendo DS, as well as PC. The game's story was written by Adam Foshko, who wrote a string of DreamWorks movie tie-in games including Shrek the Third, Kung Fu Panda, Madagascar 2, and Monsters vs. Aliens. The game received mixed reviews, currently sitting at a 65 on Metacritic. The game's story is told through Barry being on a talk show hosted by Jeanette Chung,
by the way, racist name,
talking about his newfound fame following the events of the movie.
Barry, your face is everywhere. T-shirts, posters, books. Your mug is on a mug, for B's sake. There's even a video game.
I hadn't heard about the video game.
It's both challenging and entertaining.
It is not. Jerry Seinfeld, John Goodman, Patrick Warburton, and Tress MacNeille all reprise their roles from the movie in the game, which I always have to give credit for with these games. So we get taken to Barry's first day of work as he's leaving the house.
Wait till the girls at the nail place hear my Barry graduated BU with straight B's.
They thought that joke was so great they had to put it in here too. Barry goes to meet Adam as they head for their first day of work at Hunex. When he gets to work, Barry gets put on the honeycomb collector, where he has to collect the good honeycombs in a bucket while avoiding the burnt honeycombs. After collecting 10 of those, Barry moves on to his next job as a taxi driver helping workers get to the factory. Finally, Barry ends his day as a race car driver? Okay. Oh, you didn't enjoy any of those little mini games? Well, you better get used to them because they make up the majority of your playtime in this game. Where most movie tie-in games follow a linear path through the story of the movie, B-Movie does that while also throwing in this pseudo open world hub area. Beanox, the developers of the game, did a really good job of recreating both the city and honey factory from the movie for the player to free roam around. In fact, the majority of the locations and graphics in general look very good in this game. Like other tie-in games, B-Movie follows the same story as the film, but in between story missions, you're forced to complete a certain number of these mini-games before you can unlock the next story mission. And there's nothing telling you how many you need to complete before you unlock the next mission. So you end up just blindly wandering around trying to find the shortest and quickest minigame, quick hint by the way, it's the mechanic one, with no idea how close you are to moving on to the next story mission. After being forced to play anywhere from 3 to 10 of these annoying minigames between each mission, it becomes really clear that these were just put in place to pad out the game time, because the story missions themselves were extremely short and repetitive too. Like in the movie, Barry goes out with the pollen jocks and learns how to pollinate flowers. After this, he gets stuck on a tennis ball, and through a series of quick time events evades getting squished. After that, you have to use wind currents to fly through the rain, where he ends up in Vanessa's apartment. In this part, Barry has to buzz in front of people's faces before again using a quick time event, before being squished, which causes them to accidentally hit Ken and run into the bathroom. After Vanessa comes in to save Barry and you complete even more minigames, you go to the next mission, which takes part in Barry's dream from the movie where him and Vanessa are having a nice picnic in the park. In this scene, you again play the same flower pollination part from earlier, but now while under attack from wasps, which you can use the pollen to shoot out of the sky, which is actually pretty fun. You then go back to the hive and play even more minigames before going to the next mission where you take on the warehouse worker in the boss battle. You buzz around in his face, use a quick time event, and eventually take him out and take off after the honey truck. This chase scene is again full of lazy quick time events as you move up, down, left, and right to avoid the cars on the road. Barry follows the truck to the bee farm, he takes photos of what's going on, shoots even more wasps out of the sky, buzzes in more humans' faces in another boring, quick time-filled boss battle. I mean, seriously, 2 hours into this game, we have more copy and pasting than my high school English essays. Several more boring minigames later, and again, our next story mission sees Barry flying through traffic following Mr. Montgomery. This time, though, he runs into some humans who, through another series of quick time events, try and squish Barry. Barry eventually follows Mr. Montgomery, where he hears him saying that he has a secret weapon to use in the trial hidden in his office. Barry, again, flies through the rain and the traffic and makes his way to Montgomery's office and finds that it was actually a trap to kill Barry, making this entire mission completely pointless. Barry escapes and after another day at work goes back to the same warehouse from earlier and again buzzes around in people's faces. He goes back to the hive, does another crap ton of these minigames, then goes to Vanessa's to have a boss battle with Ken, then immediately goes and does more minigames. In the first half of the game, the story missions were at least full missions, and you only had to do 3 or so minigames to unlock the next. At this point in the game, the story missions are getting shorter and shorter, while at the same time the number of minigames you have to do to unlock the next one has increased to almost 10 between each mission. And these later missions are just copy and pasted locations and mechanics from the earlier missions. making this one of the laziest examples of game design I have ever seen. It's very clear the developers wanted to put as little effort into this game as possible and achieved that goal. This repetitive nature is only here to pad out the length of the game in order to justify charging full price for it. I don't even feel like describing the rest of the game to you because it's the exact same as it has been up to this point. Barry completes a bunch of minigames, flies through rain or traffic, buzzes around in people's faces, and shoots wasps. That's all this game is. Over and over until the game finally mercifully ends. I don't know what anyone would play this game for. If you want the story, the movie has the same story in much less time and better animation. It's not for the gameplay because it has every mechanic that people who play games hate. Like I said earlier, I recommend the movie in a so bad it's good way, just because it is such a bizarre film, but I do not recommend this game under any circumstances. While The Tale of Despero from last month was graphically and technically worse, and I still consider it the worst game I've ever played, I somehow hate B-movie game more, just because of how lazy its design is and how much it disrespects its audience. You know, after 2 straight months of playing these bad movie tie-in games, I really need some good licensed games in order to get me in a better mood. Something good, something decent, something pure.